Hello, welcome to Sky Sweaty Record Review, episode 100. It's the only first listen new music review show hosted by a French professor immediately after leaving the YMCA. You will notice I have not immediately left the YMCA. I'm actually still at my office, hence all the books, and I'm recording my 100th episode. And I'm doing something new. I knew I would get to 100 episodes. I don't think I knew that I would enjoy making the show so much. I don't think I expected the kind of response I've gotten. It's not a huge response. I'm not an internet phenomena, but I definitely have people who watch my show and who like it, and that was unexpected. I really am doing it for me, so if other people like it, all the better. So I talk about new music all the time, basically 3 new albums every single week, and it's great, but I realize there are some albums that have just slipped by, that history has basically forgotten. And as someone who loves music and who lives with music and who talks about it and studies it, I really want to have a venue to bring up those albums. The term that I'm going to use is a term I borrow from my brother Amos. He refers to movies as being classiques. A classique is a movie that is not well appreciated, but is actually an awesome movie. The best example of that is House Guest, starring Sinbad and Phil Hartman. It's an amazing movie. It's really funny, but it's basically forgotten to time. So I'm going to every 100 episodes review a classique, and I'll do a kind of pretentious professorial beginning before I go off to the gym and review the album. Well, let's talk about it. What am I going to actually be discussing? I'm going to be talking about David Bowie's 1987 album, Never Let Me Down. Now, you might be thinking, Sky, how can David Bowie ever be underrated? He is, okay? There are many phases of David Bowie's career, and the 80s are mainly remembered as his, Let's Dance phase, the stuff he did with Nile Rodgers, and that's great. And then the 90s and everything else like that. There's so many different phases. David Bowie never really lost a step. He kept making great music, but the music changed forms and people basically dropped out and stopped listening. People talk about how the Dylan that you first heard is the Dylan that you love most. Artists who change their form, artists who evolve, you tend to love the form that you first encountered. I think that's true with Bowie as well. And the Bowie that I was introduced to was 1987's Never Let Me Down. So this is also kind of an experiment. Does this album hold up to the highest scrutiny? I've always loved it, for reasons I will explain. But if I actually listen to it, am I going to, at the end of it, say, you know what, this truly is a great album? Or is it just my nostalgia getting wrapped up? When I say nostalgia, it is hard to explain to you how nostalgic I am about David Bowie's album, Never Let Me Down. It was literally the first piece of music I ever bought. I was 10 years old when it came out, 1987, and my brother, I think, had it on cassette, Amos, the same one, and I wanted it too. And so I begged my parents, and they actually bought me a cassette player, a boombox, and that one cassette. And I would just sit in my room, and I had this roll-top desk, which had these secret compartments, and I hid Halloween candy in there. So I'd sit underneath my desk, eating Halloween candy, listening to this David Bowie album on repeat. So my opinion is not exactly unbiased. Right now, I'm going to leave. I'm going to go back to my house. I'm going to get my gym gear on. I'm going to listen to the album again and see, does it really stand up? Is it fair to say that the same genius who made Ziggy Stardust and who made Black Star, made Hunky Dory, who made Glow, who made all these great albums, made Never Let Me Down? Is it just as good as those? Should it be considered in the same light as those? What good is there in David Bowie's 1987 Never Let Me Down? Let's find out. I'm a menace now that I know how to edit things together in my phone. You're going to see more of this. Do you like it? Dislike it? Comment in the subscribe box button. I don't care. Actually, I do care. Comment. All right, I'm going to go exercise now. Sometimes I get questions. How do I prepare to go to the gym? I have my finely tuned diet of raw cookie dough. before I go to the gym. And that's why I go to the gym. See? It's a circle. All right, and I'm back from my workout. I got back and I'm ready to do some more production on my video. I got out my David Bowie getting arrested in Rochester in '76. It's sort of our claim to fame in this city. I got out my vinyl. I took out some of my CDs, Space Oddity and Ziggy Stardust. This is funny. I wanted to get the deluxe edition Ziggy Stardust that Ryko came out with. I begged my mom for it, but she was afraid that it was too homoerotic. I think she might have been afraid that it would have turned me gay. I don't think that's how homosexuality works, but who knows? It might have. Hunky Dory, Black Tie, White Noise, another underrated one, an insanely underrated Outside. I'm trying to figure out, where does this weird album from 1987 fit in? Does it fit in? Can we have Ziggy Stardust and Hunky Dory? Can we put these next to each other? Everything about this album just screams 1987, right? Look at that cover with the crazy fonts. This album cover looks like a furniture commercial in a magazine in 1987. He's got his long hair. He's got this kind of top hat circus theme going. The thing to remember about Bowie is that this album is like all of his albums. It is fashion in a way. Bowie moved fashion forward and followed fashion constantly innovating and constantly following. So the parts of this album that are great are the parts that are inventive and new, and the parts that are maybe less than great are the parts where he's following it. But that's what he's always done, right? Ziggy Stardust is a ridiculously 70s album. Now, it's great, but it smells of the 70s. Have you ever listened to Space Oddity? This thing is so stamped in the 1960s, I find it almost unlistenable. So then the question is, is this album, is my fondness for it just related to, eating Skittles under my desk while listening to it? Or is it actually a lost masterpiece? Is it my nostalgia or is it great? And the answer is yes. It's both. I think that my nostalgia has influenced it a little bit, but in general, this is a lost masterpiece of David Bowie. So you should listen to it, and I'll tell you why. The production on the whole thing is always more than you think it's going to be. It's a 50-minute album, it's pretty long, and the songs are quite long, but they're never gratuitously long. There'll often be added elements at the very end. Like at the song Beat of Your Drum. There's this guitar solo that goes on at the end, and there's this extra little guitar bit, and he adds these little vocal elements all over the place. If you listen to it with headphones really carefully, you'll hear how rich it is. Thematically, it's a little bit all over the place. I don't know if there's a really one theme of the whole thing. It feels like it's sort of about getting older. He was, I think, 40 when he released this. But it's just excellent. And I'm going to go through. And in general, I would say, I'll take you through how each song is way too 80s, okay? It's way too much like those font choices, okay? But at the same time, the ways that it's a true Bowie album. You have to love the artists who are geniuses. You have to take what's bad, and remember what's good, and hear the good in what it is. That's the theme of the classique. I'm going to get to some great Neil Young albums in the future, and Dylan albums, and things by great geniuses who are not doing what you want them to do. But maybe they are. All right, so let's start off with the first song, Day In, Day Out. This is a great example of exactly where this album is going, and exactly how this album is both avant-garde and stuck in the 80s. Just listen to the beginning. This whole thing has this broken up staccato quality, super 80s orchestra hits, but there's these nice little emotional elements in the singing as well. So let's listen to Day In, Day Out off of 1987's Never Let Me Down by David Bowie. Once again, my internet is terrible. We'll see. Okay, here it is. So you're thinking, all right. Okay. You're hearing so much just right there. You're hearing those horn hits. You're hearing this interesting undercurrent of low synths. You're hearing Bowie's really bravado voice, and you're hearing the background singers, and we'll keep listening. Just listen to all these things that are happening all at once. And you can't quite hear it here, but the bass is almost like Radiohead bass or something. Like it drops out and comes back in. It's very challenging. And then goes into the verse. Eventually. Like I said, he really lets it ride on this album. Okay, She Was Born a Handbag. So I invite you to listen to this song and really pay attention to the way that it's constructed and the way that it's produced. Because it's easy just to hear it and just go, all right, it's just Bowie doing an 80s thing, I don't need to hear it. But it's really so much more. The next track, Time Will Crawl, is awesome. It's got his super exaggerated vocals. The thing about Bowie and his singing is just he doesn't just have range like in terms of low and high. He has range in terms of like attitudes he takes on. You know, he has all these personalities, Ziggy Stardust, Thin White Duke, all that stuff. He's able to like have his low voice and his high voice and his super British voice, and I think Time Will Crawl is this great example too of Bowie's songwriting that's vaguely science fiction. Like, nobody writes vague science fiction like David Bowie. I mean, most of Ziggy Stardust, most of Space Oddity, most of Low, all that kind of fits into this sort of like spaceman theme, but nothing's really developed. It leaves a lot to the imagination. So here's the second track off of this really excellent album. And here it starts with a guitar. It's an oddly guitar-driven album for being an album that feels like an 80s synthesizer-driven album. Because I don't think it's really either. I think they fight. I'll go ahead and... And hear how it's textured. You have an electric guitar, acoustic guitar coming in, keyboards in the background, low vocals in the background, lead vocals in the leader, other guitar coming in, bass strings coming in. This has all happened since I started talking to you. It's really intense, but it's easy to overlook. And we'll get to the chorus just so you can get it stuck in your head. And I could hear, you're sitting there and you're listening to this, and you're saying, that's kind of cheesy, Sky. It is a little cheesy. But get past that and listen to how well written it is and how much of it is like the Bowie that you love. Really, the first 4 tracks on this album are just, 5 actually, are just amazing, perfect examples of David Bowie songwriting in general. Definitely track 3 is maybe the most classic Bowie song, Beat of Your Drum. What's interesting is it starts off with these strings that are kind of staccato strings, which go throughout most of the album. Then it mixes in with this kind of burping keyboard, and throughout the album, it's a huge mixture of the acoustic and the electronic. And I listen to a lot of new music, and so much of new music now is what is acoustic and what is electronic, and how do they merge together. Bowie's not the first to do it. Bowie's rarely the first to do anything, but he is one of the first to really push it this far. And I think you can hear that in this song. I mean, the chorus is super poppy. I like the beat of your drum, doop, doo, doo, doo. But everything leading up to it beforehand, he's got his really low register, creepazoid singing voice here. So we'll listen to, again, just how he layers these things in this song. I'm just going to go to 30 seconds here. So you have the drums, kind of burping keyboards. Now get ready for super low, charismatic Bowie singing. Really listen to the song. Listen to this album, listen to this song, the way that these high strings mix with his low singing. And then the chorus comes in much later. It's a very kind of creepy song. I like to beat on your drum. I'd like to look through your things. But this is a great example of Bowie's songwriting where he has all this avant-garde stuff wrapped around a really accessible chorus. I mean, if you take like Changes as a great example, the whole song is insane. It's all over the place. But then you just listen and you go, changes, but then the rest of it, it's like he takes you all these different places in the song just to bring you to this really nice, interesting hook of a chorus. This also has my favorite lyric on the album where he just says in his super low Bowie voice, "Disco brat, follow the pack." And just disco brat is a great Bowie term. And then the stamp of the album, Never Let Me Down. If you watch my show, if you've watched even more than one of my 100 episodes, or so help you if you've watched all 100, immediately go listen to the song Never Let Me Down. It's the title track. I put it up there in the top 10 of all Bowie songs of all times. Yes, I'm counting the rest of his music. It is an amazing song. It's got everything that makes this album good and very little of what makes it bad. It's got a driving bass, it's got keyboard, guitar, this nice harmonica line. At the end, he replaces the harmonica with a whistling. It's highly emotional, and he just has this great ability with his voice at the entire song to change it just slightly. Like the last time he sings the chorus, he just tags at the end of each line with his own voice overdubbed. And I don't know, this is just like modern indie music tries really hard to do what Bowie does basically effortlessly on this track. It's emotional, it's also a little bit distant, it's mixing electronic and acoustic, it's catchy, it's artistic, it's got personal vision to it. So let's listen to it a little bit here. It's easy to turn it off at this point because it sounds like it's automated drums. But just keep listening.
When I believed in nothing, I called your name. Trapped in a high-dollar joint in some place.
And listen to the way the melody develops. Anyways, and continues on, does another verse, and gets to the chorus. And this great chorus, super catchy, yet sparse, right? Just saying, never let me down. It's a chorus that's a hook. It's mostly space, right? I don't know how he does it. I don't know how he wrote such a great song, and I don't know why everyone doesn't know it. But I do know why. Because everything else he did is so damn good that you just get lost. You can't pay attention to every great thing that Bowie ever did. I mean, think about all the attention that his last 3 albums have gotten. They're all great. But if he lived another 20 years, who knows? Maybe we would have overlooked those as well. The crappy review that I read that's attached to the streaming service calls this a hit or miss album and very forgettable, except for this track, which they say is dedicated to John Lennon. Put it in the comments if you can find evidence of this. I don't know why he's saying this is about John Lennon or why they're saying it. I don't think it is. The next song is a very solid Bowie rock song called Zeros. I think it's a response to Heroes, except where Heroes is depressing about heroes, Zeros is inspiring about zeros. Kind of hopeful. It's got the nice style that Bowie has of creating really extended melodies over several lines. He does that at the end of the verse, leading into the chorus. Then we get to the song Glass Spider, which, okay, I remember this was my favorite as a kid because it's a story. But it's kind of, okay, it's a lot like Stonehenge. So if you've seen Spinal Tap, you know Stonehenge is the song where they talk about, and oh, the little children of Stonehenge and how they dance. It's this song where he talks about this giant spider who would like leave and its children would starve, and the song is all about like these children starving and desiring to be with their mother again. Here he is talking. 1 second.
It would drake the skeletons over its web, in weeks creating a macabre shrine of remains.
The macabre shrine of remains, sewn into the living rock of Stonehenge. But then it goes into not a hard rocking bit, but this really interesting chorus. And these verses, I mean, it's not even a chorus or a verse. It's like, it's just music about, it's just this motif over and over again. Bum, 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 da, bum, bum, bum. Ja, 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 ja. And it's just over and over again. Mama, come back. The water's all gone. It's a really depressing, dark, it's art rock, right? I mean, listen to this. He's on full artistic mode. He's in pushing fashion forward mode, not following it. And it's excellent. I do have a funny story about this. I was in New Hampshire. I used to stay with my godmother during the summers. And I used to have to watch her terrible television. Just the worst. Like, she would just watch like Kojak and like TJ Hooker like all day long. And I saw an ad for the David Bowie concert that was going to be on, I don't know, ABC or NBC. And I begged her to let me stay up and watch it. And I stayed up to watch it. And I remember two things. Number one, she let me have Tab soda for the first time. And I kept on drinking that Tab soda, and I would keep on pouring sugar in it, thinking it would taste better if I poured sugar in it, but I never liked it. Only later did I come to understand that it was actually the aspartame that I hated. And there's no amount of sugar I could add into it. And the other thing was how depressingly disappointing this concert was. He was playing all these songs I didn't care about. Fame and Fashion and China Doll and Ziggy Stardust and Space Oddity. All I wanted to hear were the songs that I knew, which were the songs off of the new album. So I was probably the only person in the entire country watching this David Bowie concert in 1987, begging them to play any of the new songs. I think they only played like one or two. One of them being Glass Spider, because it was called the Glass Spider Tour. So it's just kind of a funny story. Both about me trying to pour sugar into Tab to make it drinkable. And then also just begging him to get past all of his greatest hits to get to the new music. To be fair, the album does take a dip after that. I mean, the next song is Shining Star, which is, again, somewhat avant-garde. He's kind of rapping in it, or at least kind of talking, kind of off-key. It's got a really booming drum line that leads through everything. It actually kind of reminded me, or predicted sort of Erasure in the future. Do you hear that? So it's basically a drum line with very minimal any other music, and then his rapping over it, but just slightly off-key. So that's an interesting track. Laurie Anderson makes an appearance, which lets you know what kind of music this is supposed to be. Laurie Anderson, future Lou Reed. So I guess she's kind of Eskimo buddies with David Bowie on that. Eskimo sister? I guess she's his Eskimo sister. But she was an art rocker from New York, and so her appearance lets you know that this wasn't even supposed to be a pop album or an 80s album. It's supposed to be an avant-garde rock album. But then the next track is just this terrible thing I won't make you listen to called New York's in Love. And God, I hate songs about rock and roll, and I hate songs about New York, unless it's like a really smart song about New York. It's like New York is a metaphor. It's got the Purple Haze drum beat, ba, ba, baku, baku, ba. And the guitar, it sounds like late era Michael Jackson guitar. You know how Michael Jackson never really understood what a guitar was? Like he just kind of thought it was like da-da, like a really clean da-da, da-da. It's terrible. Don't listen to New York's in Love, okay? Listen to Never Let Me Down, but skip that song. The next track, 87 and Cry, is a song about 1987. And this is basically a punk song. I'm going to challenge you, see if I'm right. Listen to 87 and Cry and imagine it being sung by either Johnny Rotten or Iggy Pop. Because I'm pretty sure that was the mode that it was in. It's supposed to be an Iggy Pop song or a Sex Pistols song, except it's like a 1980s song. It sounds like a song from the 1980s. The drum sound, it's overly crafted, has a lot of nice little guitar lines. Carlos Alomar is a guitarist who he was working with. Just an amazing guy. I mean, Carlos Alomar is responsible for at least 10% of what makes David Bowie great in the 80s and after. Then the song ends with Bang Bang, which is another avant-garde track with lots of strings mixed in with great lead guitar work. A very sparse chorus again, and a great ending track. I've always had one problem. I just want to get this out there while I'm talking about David Bowie. Tim Burton's 1989 Batman starred Jack Nicholson, being Jack Nicholson as the Joker. How the hell was this guy not the Joker? If you read Dark Knight Returns by Frank Miller, it's very clear that this was the basis of the Joker in that. He would have been the best Joker. He was a great actor. He looks like him. He knows how to laugh. Instead, they gave $20 million to Jack Nicholson. Anyways, that's my last little bit of David Bowie in the 80s comments. So there you go. Is it a lost masterpiece? Yes. I'm taking myself back to underneath the desk eating candy. Yeah. But also I'm taking myself back to New Hampshire and that Tab soda. In a way, David Bowie's genius is like the sucralose, the aspartame in Tab soda. Like, you can't get that taste of genius out of the Tab. You can pour in all the 80s production that you want and substance abuse and the world forgetting about him and getting old, all that stuff. But inside is that genius of David Bowie that you cannot erase on any of his albums ever. And this album is proof of it. Yes, I just positively compared David Bowie to Tab Soda. That's why you've been watching this show for 100 episodes, and that's why you'll continue to watch for 100 more. Spoiler alert, 100 episodes, I'm going to be talking about Onyx. I love their second album, but you have to keep watching to find out. So, until then, new music is the fountain of emotional youth, and geniuses are always geniuses, like always. You just got to figure out why. All right. That was a lame catchphrase. I did all this production to end on such a lame catchphrase. Maybe I'll do something cute at the end to save this video. Oh, if I don't, I don't. If I do, there's the camera.
I know what I'll do.
Let me down.